Good afternoon, everybody. All righty. And welcome to this Black History Month presentation here at the library, Glassboro Public Library. I'd like to thank the library system of Gloucester County for sponsoring this program this afternoon. I'm really appreciative of that. They've, offered us, we're using a lot of their equipment and facilities, and they are certainly, to be acknowledged for that. I want to, of course, present the title presentation here, African Americans, Women of South Jersey in the Civil War. One of the reasons that I focus on this particular century, the 19th century, that is all of the 1800s. When you start looking in the history books for locally South Jersey, you don't see the African American presence in the history books when you get really before 1910. You don't. That's not there in the Borough Almanacs, the Borough historic picturesque galleries. You see workers in glass factories, you see farmers, but you don't see any African Americans in the 1800s going back. So this is one reason why I lay wood into that era in terms of my research and my publications, which are mostly in journals in the local historical societies, Cumberland County Historical Society, which I published this article. No, that was in, Vineland Historical Association, which is another situation. Anyway, bottom line is, today, this is the topic. And if we can move to the next frame. This topic, I started off with this woman named Fleta, who on this date, in this newspaper, Flag of Our Union, which was a Civil War era newspaper published in Massachusetts, she was an African American woman who only known as Fleta, and she published an article, What Do Women Know About War? Because the popular idea was that only men knew about war. Only men knew what it meant to be in war. And Fleta offered this argument, or she addressed the issue, and that's who I take off from in terms of this piece. I want to dedicate this presentation to two women, Priscilla Hooper and Jane Barkis. Priscilla Hooper, school teacher, right here in lived in Woodbury, right down the street from the Dickersons, who we'll talk about, and who was a teacher in Swedesboro. Anyway, Jane Barkis was not an educated woman. In fact, she couldn't even read or write. She was a widow. She lived in Bridgeton. Her husband went to war as a member of the 54th Massachusetts. And you remember Glory, the movie Glory? Her husband was there. His name was Ezekiel. And he after that assault on Fort Wagner, when that 54th Regiment retreated to their encampments after that, what was left of them, they were in some very unsanitary conditions. He got dysentery and he died in camp, which left the Barkis family in a terrible circumstance, because they had, and we'll talk about them a little bit, but here we had a widow, because she died. She died like when the kids were very young. And so it offered a situation. What happens in that situation? How many children were caught up in that situation in the Civil War, and it just offers us different perspectives on what happened. Okay, thank you. Please. Mrs. Hooper, Priscilla Hooper, died 4 days after the Civil War started, which started on April the 9th. Oh, it ended on April the 9th. It started on what, April the 12th, I think. Yeah, April the 12th, something like that. 1861, that's the year. And April was the month. Anyway, no, but it's April 12th, 1861, Civil War starts. And a couple of days later, she dies, right? And this was in the, can you click that, can you click this, please? Oh, jump over there. There's a mouse here. Use the mouse. Can you use that mouse? Is the mouse alive? Yeah, we got this. Oh, it's already playing, and we can't hear it. What's going on? Oh, well, listen. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, this was in the Christian Recorder newspaper, this article about Ms. Priscilla Hooper and the fact that they said she was a teacher, that she stood high whenever she was examined. Those that were to be examined, those who were to be examined at the same time, people who were being examined as she was being examined, white and colored, felt ashamed on hearing prompt answers. So she smoked in her exams. And so anyway, that's Priscilla Hooper. Please, next frame, please. And here we have the Barkus family. I published this in this journal. And just as a highlight, this is what I had to say. They were married in 1847 in June, and then their family grew. They had 6 kids. These were their ages. And neither parent could read or write. And none of the school kids were going to school. These kids were like, 16, 20, none of them were in school. Parents couldn't read or write. This wasn't an unusual case at that time, right? He had $100 in personal wealth, so he was a worker who was able to have stuff at Christmas time for the family, Thanksgiving, that kind of thing. All right, thank you. Next, anyway, that's the Barkus family. Next, please. Using the census records. Go to the next one, please. Okay. I had one I was seeking. We'll go back one. Our first woman that we want to talk about is Sophia Dickerson of Woodbury. Sophia Dickerson is the better half of the couple Henry and Sophia Dickerson, Reverend Henry Dickerson and his wife Sophia, who had both come from Havre de Grace, Maryland, in the 1830s. All right, they went to Philadelphia, then they came to Woodbury sometime like in the 1840s. A lot of stuff, a lot of violence in Philly was driving people out of Philly. If you start looking at 1840 riots in Philly, it's a humdinger. Anyway, they came to Woodbury. They had property right there at the end of, you see, what's this, Glassboro Road? Glassboro Road here, Carpenter Street here. They owned the land that was leased by the government, federal and state combo, to field the 12th New Jersey Regiment of white soldiers. Of course, whites and blacks they weren't in the same organizations during the Civil War, not until 54, by the way, did that change? 1954. But, so, the government leased their land for the 12th New Jersey Infantry Volunteers, a white regiment, and a regiment is about 1,000 men, roughly. And so they trained there. Right. In fact, when you go to what is that? When we go down, where's the cement factory? When you get into Woodbury there, on the left, right? You know what I'm saying? Leroy, what's that road we going in? That's Glassboro Woodbury Road. Yeah, right. The end of that. When you open when you get to the end of that, right, you go right into the property that was owned by the Dickerson family. The Dickerson son, William, happens to be the 13th bishop of the AME Church. He died very young, 39 years old. He died of typhoid down in South Carolina, but he was very influential, William Dickerson. And so the contribution that they made by offering their land is something that's not even, it's not even, oh, let me just share this with you, something that angers me. When I'm reading a 600-page book written by Longacre, guy named Longacre, a 600-page book on the 12th New Jersey. And the only thing he says about this, they were at a, they camped at a place, they camped on a land owned by a farmer named Dickerson. Period. In 600 pages. And he gets into all the local issues of what it was like when they was in Woodbury before they broke camp, which was around the time of the Emancipation Proclamation, by the way. When they broke camp, he wrote about all this and all that. Nothing besides that was on the land, a farmer named Dickerson. Didn't even put his first name. Anyway, that's enough said on that. Anyhow, can we move that along? Go back, please. Go back up. Go back to. Well, yeah, and this is the Dickerson household, by the way. Here you see the Dickersons, Henry and Sophia, and there's William at 17 in Woodbury, and they're living with someone else who's 70 years old, blah, blah, blah. But right down the street, here we have William and Priscilla Hooper, right down the street. Okay, please move along. So they were neighbors, and that's the 1860 census. Oh, 1850. What was that, 1850? 1860. They were neighbors. And of course, most of us have seen the AME Carpenter Street School in Woodbury, familiar with that. If not, it's right there on Carpenter Street. I've lectured in there twice. That is the AME Carpenter Street School that the Dickersons were very important in administration. Please. Okay, I already said what happened with Ezekiel, so we can move through that one. Okay, and I already said that what happened to Jane Barkis and her children, and the question of how premature deaths of child-rearing Civil War widows affected children's welfare, I say in this article, deserves more study. Fortunately, Harrison and John, who were two of the children, both younger than 14, were subsequently cared for by William Coursey. Most of the Courseys we know use C-O-R-S-E-Y, right? Now, these days. Okay. You'd be interested in how close Coursey and Kersey are, and there's some interesting kind of linguistics going on there. Anyway, we can move to the next one. Thank you. All righty. How did we get here so quick? Please move. Do we want to be here? Oh, no, you can go back. You can go back. Because, why? Now we're going to get ready to talk about black soldiers. So we might as well talk about the black soldiers who was at Camp William Penn, which was outside of Philadelphia. They trained 11 infantry regiments there between 1863 and 1865. I happen to have done my PhD dissertation. I did a social history of that place, so I'm very intimate with it. And I believe this is the 25th, one of the regiments. I think this, whatever, which one, it doesn't make a difference. I'll say a number, it doesn't make a difference. Anyway, let me move to the next one. These are the 11 regiments, infantry regiments, 1,000 men apiece, roughly, is a regiment. The 3rd, the 3rd, the 6th, the 8th, 22nd, 24th, 25th, 32nd, 41st, 30th, 43rd, 55th, blah, blah, blah. Where was the 1st? Where's the 2nd? Where's the 4th, 5th? Where are the ones in between? They're all being designated based on where they are organized. The 1st is up out of D.C. The 2nd is out of D.C. 3rd, we see there in Philly. The 4th, where's the 4th? I think they, I don't remember anyway. It'll come to me. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Interesting stuff going on about these people. By the way, like these guys here rebelled at Camp William Penn and destroyed William Still's store. Yes, he did. Look, that's in the records. I mean, a lot of them got locked up for it. And William Still was given, he was a sutler, S-U-T-L-E-R. That meant the person who would sell sewing needles and postcards and different kinds of things, candy and cookies to the soldiers. And then at the end of the month, when they got paid, they had a bill that, was due. And they claimed that Still, they didn't agree with his figures. And the 25th destroyed his store. And so Still was given several months leeway in paying taxes on his the money that he made there. Okay, that just happened to be it. Anyway, let's move. We can move, please. So the second woman we're going to focus on, Frances Boyer. This is a young lady who, in 1860, she's just 13 years old. But she has eyes on a guy. She has eyes on a, young girl, you know what I mean? Here's a young man, ready to go off to war, 18 years old. And his name was Henry Henson. And so Henry Henson was in the 8th Regiment, USCT. And the 8th Regiment in February 1864 got caught in one of the terrible, terrible ambushes set up by the Confederates down in Florida, in Olustee, Florida. Olustee. If you put in Olustee, Florida, if you Googled it, it's going to talk about that battle. That was so devastating to the North. So Henry Henson, by the way, this is Frances Boyer. You see she's 13, and this is 1860, and she has that large family. You can go to the next one, please. And this is Henry Henson. He was at Company K, 8th Regiment. This is a picture of that defeat, and he was wounded. He caught a bullet right in his groin. Then he was captured. He was captured and taken to the most infamous prison in Civil War history, which is Andersonville. If anybody's ever heard of Andersonville. That's where they had the skeletons, you see in the picture, the skeletons of the prisoners, like after they were rescued, like they were being rescued at one of them Nazi concentration camps at the end of the war. That's what they looked like. And so, in fact, the commander of Andersonville was the only one convicted and executed for crimes against humanity during the war. And so, tell you about that. Anyway, so he's there. He's laying on the ground. This was, where you going to sleep at? Or, where you at? Let's lay down. And years later, one of his neighbors, who was also a prisoner, a white guy, because they had white and black. They separated them, but they was white and black in the prison. He said, I remember when they brought Henry in. I was there. And he had nothing to do there. He had no protection. He had to lay on the ground to go to sleep. Anyway, we can go to the next, please. You can see, this came in the New York Times, the list of casualties at the Battle of Olustee. And then in fact, they have down here, they even have his name messed up, but Company K, and they say, and they call him Henry Holson. That's what they call him, Henry Holson. They changed that U. Well, they messed it up anyway. That's him. New York Times. Look, this is what the news that came out, how all these people got wasted down there. Okay, we move to the next one, please. All righty, and here, what we see is Henry and Frances after they're married. This is separated because it went from one page to the other. And you see how they have all these children. Well, they have Nathan and Henry, little Henry, and then little Francis, and then Nathan, and then Jacob, and then Laura, and they kept on going. I think it was about 9 kids before they got finished. Anyway, please, we can move on. Henry Henson, who had that experience, and Francis Boyer led a long life together. Next woman, Hannah. And by the way, Francis Boyer is in Piles Grove down near Woodstown. All right, that's her. So we've moved from Woodbury down to Woodstown. We're going to hang there for a minute and talk about one of her neighbors who was older than her. Hannah Ann Reason. Hannah Ann Reason, whose husband, one of my heroes, man of character, Moses Reason. Moses Reason was a sergeant. I mean, you know, he was a natural-born leader of men, character. So, as the war was just about over, so 1865, no, after the war was over, they sent all of the black troops out to Texas. That's another whole story. Most of the black troops went to Texas. And while there, 10 days before he was supposed to be mustered out of the service, 10 days, he was ordered to make, because he was sergeant of the guard of the prisoners. So a lieutenant came over there and said, all right, I want you to make that soldier over there carry that log for 6 hours. He said, I ain't going to make that man do that, man. You know. So they made him do it. He got locked up 10 days before he was supposed to get out. And they made him carry a log 6 hours a day. And busted him in pay and the whole, you know, associated kind of thing with that. But that was 10 days before he got out after going through all what he did. Anyhow, and that had to do with that kind of like discipline that some of these white officers thought that these black soldiers needed. You know, that they need some real wood laid on them, right? So that's how that went. Anyway, we know that story. Anyway, this is Moses and their children. That's one of my heroes. And they're in Woodbury. They're right, exactly, Woodstown. They lived in Woodstown. And I'll just say this, Hannah Ann was from Delaware, and this was her maiden name. And now, let's get to Rosanna Henson of Burlington. Come, let's go to Burlington for a minute. Get up that way. Rosanna Henson, husband was Company K, 22nd Regiment. Oh, by the way, I'm so sorry. Moses Reason was in the 22nd Regiment. I need to say something about the 22nd Regiment because that was an awesome regiment. All of them were, but the 22nd stood out for its accomplishments. When Lincoln got killed, they were assigned to go help hunt Booth. I mean, they was kicking open doors. But that part, we don't even see that in the history book. The 22nd, they ain't got no black people kicking no doors open. No. No, they ain't going like that. You know, get the story wrong. But that's how the story was. Anyway, not only that, after he died, they were selected to represent United States colored troops in his funeral cortege, the 22nd Regiment. Moreover, their military record was exemplary during what we call the Petersburg Campaign, which lasted several months as Grant was trying to break down Lee, Petersburg, and Richmond in the final months of the war. So, what happened? and now all of them Petersburg charges, Chapin's Farm, and all the rest. I could just keep naming them, in that Petersburg campaign that operated in the different battles over the several months to break down the capital of the Confederacy. Anyhow, Benjamin, who was Rosanna's husband, they were out of Delaware. Both of them were out of Delaware. They came here with their little children and moved to Burlington, and then he joined the military and got his elbow shot off. And here we go to now what happens? Now he becomes disabled. He comes home disabled, not only physically, he was disabled mentally too. Their marriage ultimately dissolved, and she opened a store in Burlington. She used to sell candy and stuff like that, But the deal was African Americans in New Jersey were not being extended the state benefit of $6 a month for each soldier who had a family. All right? That came much later, and it caught it up later, but when it was first offered, blacks were off limits because they were, quote unquote, weren't state. They weren't represented by a state regiment. They were a federal regiment of the United States Colored Troops. These are kind of issues. So they had to fight for that. She wrote a letter to Lincoln. And this is what she said to Abraham Lincoln. Sir, my husband, you can read it, has not received any pay since last May, and then only $13. Well, that was an improvement over the 7 because it had taken that long to stop the unequal pay. Because initially, African Americans were only getting $7 a month. It was only later that it got to 13, which was everybody's, all private, were getting that pay. So, and then she says, of course, I have 4 children to support. She said, a hard life this, with an exclamation point. She said, I've been a colored woman, do not get any state pay. She's talking about that $6 bonus. Yet, she told him what was up. He's fighting too. And SIC means this is exactly the way she wrote it. Okay? And that was July 11th, 1964. This is the source. Please. On the issue of the state pay, the Clifton Recorder in August 1864, this was wrote this. It said they were talking about the issue in New Jersey, and that they were promised the same, that $6, right? And after, they know what I mean? And then they had to struggle for that. And wow, huh? Fantastic, right? I mean, we have our next one, please. Okay. Let's get with that. Now we're going to come back. What'd you say? Oh, go back, please. Sure. Not good. Wow. Absolutely. Okay. Now, this is a woman who represents, you can see how long she lived.